Hey everyone, if you enjoy old school RPGs like Baldur's Gate and Dragon Age Origins, combined with an in-depth and mature story with some of the best voice acting I've ever heard, it literally makes me feel like I'm watching an episode of Game of Thrones sometimes while I play, well, then the Waylanders might be the game for you, and I highly recommend checking it out. The Waylanders is available now on PC via Steam. The game is in early access, and I want to thank the developers for giving me a review copy of the game. Today, I'm actually beginning a brand new series on my channel where I pick a new game every month, and the game has to have come out in that month, and I do a video featuring that game of the month here on the channel. Now, that video could be a full-blown review, it could even be a preview if the game's not out yet, or it could be an impressions video, which is what I'm doing here since the game is in early access and a full review score wouldn't be fair on a game that's not finished yet. But I can promise you, whatever type of video I do on the game of the month itself will always be a game that I'm very excited about, that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So you have any taste that's similar to mine, if any of the games I like to play, you like to play, which would be RPGs, pretty much anything Nintendo, you should get a lot of value and entertainment from these videos, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any Game of the Months going forward. And if you enjoy the content, please drop a like. That intro out of the way, let's take a look at the featured Game of the Month for June 2020, The Waylanders. Now, when this game says that it's in early access, it really means it, so please pay attention to my impressions for the current build of the game. First of all, what is the Waylanders about? Well, you play as a character who you actually get to customize at the start of the game, choose your appearance, your race, and apply points to your stats, albeit the customization is limited to a degree in terms of choosing exactly what your character looks like. You can't change your body or your face that much besides the color and amount of hair you have. However, once your character is built, you're thrust into the middle of a world full of rich Celtic history and mythology. This is what had me hooked. You get so many games and movies about Greek mythology and Norse mythology. Looking at you, God of War. But to play a game that takes place in Ireland and part of Spain even, with lots of references to its history and mythology, was so exciting for me, and it's why I've been interested in this game for months. And I have to say, once I started playing, the setting lived up to the hype. The tone was set. From the very opening cutscene of the game, I was entranced by the soundtrack and the voice acting. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, it felt like I was listening to an episode of the Game of Thrones at times. The voice acting was that incredible.
You're right, some of us learned to shut up before we turned 30.
Be nice, my dear. The sun hasn't even risen yet.
Yeah, because nighttime is when no one ever does or says anything naughty.
You're insufferable.
I love you too.
Well, the music and voiceovers are phenomenal. You may have noticed the graphics don't quite match. They aren't bad by any means, but they look more playful than the serious tone of the game's story, and it kind of feels a little out of place at times.
How's that hangover, Your Highness?
I can't believe you made me share a cabin with this.
Speak, child. What am I?
Enough!
I have done everything in my power, both as your king and as your father, to prepare you to carry the crown.
Right out of the gate, these characters are using very mature language, dropping F-bombs and other curse words left and right, which caught me off guard at first, but it's honestly awesome. It helps the characters and story feel more relatable and more realistic. But again, it's kind of offset by these graphics. It's pretty clearly a game I would not recommend for young children. Something that everyone will like is that the story takes a Zelda Ocarina of Time type twist when your character, through something that happens in the story, gains the ability to travel between the Celtic timeline that you begin in and then a completely different timeline that takes place during the Middle Ages. You need to travel back and forth between both timelines, completing quests in both to advance the story. There's lots of magic, monsters, and other mythical creatures, as well as a diverse group of races. Like humans, of course, but then you have druids, werewolves, and lots of others as well. There's a lot to talk about with the story, but I don't want to give any spoilers, and I want to get into the real meat and potatoes, which is the gameplay. I would call this a real-time strategy RPG, similar to all the classic isometric style RPGs that we used to see a ton of in the past, but we don't really get to see anymore. Actually, the former Dragon Age Origins creative director, Mike Laidlaw, is on the Gato Salvaje development team. You can actually change the camera from that classic isometric view to more of an over-the-shoulder, third-person type view if you prefer it, and you can go back and forth. What's nice about the combat is even though it's real-time strategy RPG combat, you can actually use a tactical pause to set up your formations and cue your plan of attack, which is honestly essential in my opinion. Without these pauses, I would definitely get flustered and overwhelmed, but it's nice that I can pause for a second, think about the situation, set everything up how I want to, and then get back to the combat. You get to have 5 characters in your party, which I absolutely love having a 5-character party, but I'll admit it took some getting used to for me. Having to manage 5 characters with this type of combat system felt a little overwhelming until I started to get used to it, started to realize I was really managing a lot less once I utilized the formations the way they're supposed to. And then once that combat started to click, it felt great. It was fun. It was addicting. This is the reason I played RPGs. This game took both the presentation of its story and its setting, combined with an addicting gameplay to create something awesome. However, and it hurts me to say this because there's so many amazing things about this game, the current build has issues. A good amount of pretty significant issues, actually. However, since the game is early access, the development team has been very open that the game has issues, and it's working on fixing all of them. This is not the final build of this game, and if you're not watching this in June of 2020, they may have already fixed all the issues. However, they're there now, so before you spend your money on the game, you should at least hear what they are. Let me go down the list of some of the issues that I found. Oftentimes during the combat, my game would seem to almost glitch and the screen would start flashing like a strobe light, and I would just have to stop touching my keyboard and my mouse for a couple seconds while the game brought itself back onto my screen. When I say this happened often, I mean from the very first mission this was happening. My PC has much higher specs than what's required for the game as well, so I know it's not something that was happening on my end. The other thing is, after the first 20 minutes of the game, which runs perfectly it seems, the quality of the cutscenes actually started to drop. So characters would not even move their mouths when they were talking or animate at all, and it made me feel like I was listening to a movie's audio while there was just random images blocking the screen of the movie that I was supposed to be watching. The team has acknowledged this, and they put this out in early access knowing those animations aren't complete. So again, this game is not going to stay this way. The only issues I really have are things that the development team knows about and put the game out anyway because there was such high demand. So everything's going to be fixed, but as of right now, this is the state of the game. What's even worse is sometimes the character models won't even appear at all in cutscenes, and the game will just put a random piece of land on screen while nothing else happens and the cutscene plays out through audio. There's actually entire cutscenes missing, as I had to piece together parts of the story to figure out what happened based on the context of conversations that took place after the event happened. For example, near the beginning of the game, a certain character dies, but the game just kind of skips the cutscene where the character dies and immediately goes to the characters reacting to the death. And obviously this made things very confusing and hard to follow at times. My honest opinion of the game is that it has everything it needs to be good. The team has all the ingredients. They have the recipe, but they just need to put it all together to make one tasty morsel. Please forgive me for that analogy, but the game is going to be good, but right now it kind of is a buggy mess. Despite that, the gameplay, it is quite fun. The story, interesting, and the presentation, besides the visuals, is perfect. if this is your genre of game, it's definitely worth checking out. And I can't wait to see this game once everything has been pieced together. The Waylanders is definitely on track to be one of my favorite games released in 2020, and I'm so excited to continue to play this game. And that about wraps it up for my impressions of the Waylanders Early Access. Thank you again to the development team, Gato Salvahi, for the review code. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next Game of the Month. I'm so lame. Bye, everyone.